Wonderful. And now I'll pass it over to Tanya.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And good morning, everybody. And thank you so much for being with us. Sort of as Bree just mentioned, you might not be needing to hire folks at this exact moment, but you will be not only in January and the years to come. So thank you so much for having the vision of thinking differently about your talent pipelines. So today we are talking about hiring refugee talent. This is the second of our two-part series. The first was on international students. Today is on refugee talent, and just incredibly grateful to have so many folks from the Refugee Service Collaborative here with us today who are the true experts. So what we'll do is share just the baseline, what's the state of workforce and what is the opportunity that we're looking at here, how to hire refugee talent. So really that nuts and bolts of you as an employer, how do you access these folks? Share some case studies so you see that this is working and it's really an effective model of hiring for some organizations here locally, and then make sure that we have some time for questions and next steps. So I'm going to jump right in and kind of give the lay of the land before I hand it over to the experts who are on the call with me by looking at the state of workforce in Northeast Ohio. And we can't think about local workforce until we think about the entire context of the world that we're operating in. And that is that the talent shortage or the talent crisis is not just here in Cleveland, Cuyahoga County, or Northeast Ohio. It's quite global. So if you look at this map, this is from Korn Ferry. They released this study a year ago in September, so 2023, and they looked at the worker deficit by the end of the decade. So in about 5 years' time, how many workers will be missing from the various economies across the world? So the blue, of course, is they're doing good. They have a surplus of workers, all the way until red, which is a very acute and significant deficit of workers. Thankfully, the United States, as you can see, we're not the worst off. We're not Brazil or Japan, where they're talking 12 to 18 million unfilled jobs and a worker deficit. But we're still in a pretty bad place. So that significant, that orange color that the US is in China and other places is 6 to 12 million. And when you dive into the study from Korn Ferry, they're projecting that the United States is going to be at that 8 to 10 million unfilled jobs. So a pretty significant worker deficit. And when you take that into unactualized revenue within our economy, that's $1.7 trillion of unactualized revenue due to this labor shortage. It's a pretty significant amount of money and 6% of our entire economy that could go missing if we don't figure out a way to meet this worker shortage. And of course, we want to dial in to say, okay, that's a huge number for the entire United States, but what does it look like here locally? So as of January 2023, from our friends at Team NEO, we see that we already had a pretty significant worker shortage here. So in Northeast Ohio, 16,000 unfilled jobs and not a single person looking to fill those. So it's a pretty high number already. And so again, you might not be feeling pressure to fill open seats, but the pressure is going to continue to grow. And that's because we have no natural solution, if you will, or no way that this is going to solve itself. And that is because of our incredibly low replacement rate, or birth rate, as we call it. So in the 1970s, the US government established this metric of replacement rate to help us understand how many babies need to be born per person in order for us to sustain our economy. So that's that magical line right in the center. The replacement rate for the US is 2.1. So 2.1 children per birthing mother is what we need to really keep it going as is in terms of the workforce and our industries. So if you look at that number, of course, baby boomers is a humongous generation. They far surpassed our replacement rate, but we haven't quite figured it out since. There have only been peaks in sort of millennials and a few Gen Zs that got even close to that number, but we are continuing to go lower and lower below that number. In fact, right now, so as of last week, the replacement rate was 1.6. That's really important and significant to think about, because when you need to think about is how many people are leaving the workforce and how many are coming into their place. So baby boomers right there, those that were born in the 40s, 50s, and 60s, they are preparing to retire and retire at a rate that is pretty unprecedented. So for the next 10 years, we can expect 10,000 baby boomers to reach retirement age a day. So that's 10,000 people who could leave the workforce every single day for the next decade. And if you look towards the other end of this chart, those folks are not entering the workforce at that speed. We have a really significant deficit. And so again, just to keep saying it, you might not feel the pressure for talent right now, but you sure are going to feel the pressure in the next year, the next 5 years, and especially in the next decade, as we see many folks leave the workforce and not nearly as many American-born folks filling in. But as my dad used to always say, don't waste a good crisis. And this is one of those opportunities where we can use this workforce crisis to think critically about a wonderful opportunity, which is international newcomers. Now, we use the term international newcomer to describe anyone that isn't born in the United States, but live, works, and plays here. There's many different ways that somebody can legally be a part of our community. It might be an asylee, a refugee, a humanitarian parolee, an SIV. There's a whole alphabet soup of things. They might be an international student, like we spoke about in September, or an immigrant. And that really is the alphabet soup category of the different visa types someone could be over here on, whether they are a professional athlete, a musician, or somebody who's in management at your company. No matter how you identify as an international newcomer, you do play a really critical role in not only creating vibrant communities that have a lot of interesting and wonderful things to take advantage of, but you also are a critical element of our workforce. So international newcomers are disproportionately working age, and they are contributing far more to our economy and for their size than any other group. And in fact, international newcomers have been and will continue to be the only form of population growth here in the United States for decades to come. This has sort of been a little quiet until recent years. People haven't talked about it as much, but more and more, everyone around the US is starting to realize without newcomers, we won't sustain our economy. In fact, if you look at the major US metro areas, if they weren't immigrants there in the last few decades, zero of them would have had growth. So I often think that people are like, oh, okay, well, this is a conversation for certain places, but not for everywhere. This is a conversation for very large metropolitan areas, but also for Northeast Ohio. And you can see that very clearly here when you look at the census data that came out in 2020. So if it weren't for international newcomers in Northeast Ohio, our population would have seen a pretty aggressive drop. So between 2014 and 2019, the population of Northeast Ohio declined 1.6%. At the exact same time, the international newcomer or immigrant population increased 3.1%. So if they weren't coming in and sort of adding to the population, that 1.6 decline would have been even more significant. They are the ones that really saved Michigan in many ways and other similar cities. And so we have an opportunity to sort of create those strategies so international newcomers help us completely mitigate population decline in the years to come. So of course, they're good for population, they're good for culture, they're good for sort of the economy and industry, but they also play a really unique role in fitting some of our workforce needs, which I know all of you are thinking about as employers. And I like to share this chart often when thinking about credential gaps in the workforce. So if you look closely, and I apologize, the gray line is a little light here, but the gray line is how many jobs that we have that require that credential in Northeast Ohio, or more so Cuyahoga County. And the blue bar is how many folks, oh, excuse me, I had that in reverse. The blue bar is how many jobs need that credential, and the gray line is our population with that amount of credentials. So if you see here, there's some gaps in our workforce where we have far more jobs than we do people who have little to no education or high school diploma. And we also have sort of this credential gap in bachelor's degrees. Of course, some of this is just underemployment that happens across the entire United States. But when I look at this chart, I see it as a great opportunity to be thinking critically about the way that international talent can fill in these gaps because they have these credentials or they fall in these categories. And in particular, when it comes to high school or less education and bachelor's degrees, you're going to see the refugee community. So these folks are incredibly diverse and different in terms of the skill sets they bring to the table, but they do typically fall in those two buckets. So little to no formal education or actually having a bachelor's degree. And what we want to do before we dig into the nuts and bolts of how you hire is just really quickly touch the surface of how refugees find their way to Northeast Ohio. So again, this is like the slightest touch version of the journey of a refugee. So there are about 36.4 million folks who are considered refugees under the UN definition in their home countries. There's over 110 million displaced people in the world who have different categories of sort of alignment, but we're talking just about refugees here. So refugees leave their home country out of personalized persecution, and there's a whole list of those definitions under the UN, and find themselves either in a neighboring country or a refugee camp. And refugee camps are formalized and sort of managed by UNHCR, the United Nations Higher Commissions for Refugees. About 22% of the world's population live in these camps. So that's about an estimated 6.6 million people who live in a UNHCR camp. Of those folks, once they're in a camp, they can apply for resettlement and go through a very strenuous screening process on the ground. And only about 1%, in fact, less than 1% of them get accepted through the screening process to be able to be resettled in a different country. If they make it through and are part of that fewer than 1%, they then go through a secondary screening process in the United States to get formally approved. And once they are approved, they get assigned to a resettlement agency. They buy their plane tickets, and then they fly halfway across the world and land at the Cleveland Hopkins Airport at any time of year. And so those stories that you hear are quite real, where it could be a Congolese family that arrives in the middle of February and has never seen temperatures below 70 degrees. That is very much a part of the resettlement process. You go through this screening, you don't know when you're going to end up getting accepted, you buy your flights, and you show up in the United States. So every year, the amount that we receive is set by the president. That's set on October 1st. And for this coming year, the ceiling, as they call it, is $125,000. So we've already started the resettlement year for 2025. And we're very lucky that here shortly, you'll hear from our 3 resettlement agencies here in Cleveland who do the bulk of this work. So they pick them up from the airport, they get them established, they get them in their first jobs. But what is also really important to note about refugee resettlement is that it's not our 3 resettlement agencies doing it alone. We're incredibly lucky and fortunate here in Northeast Ohio to have an entire collaborative that's focused on supporting these folks. So it's called the Refugee Services Collaborative of Greater Cleveland, or the RSC to make it shorter, whose focus is on coordinating and amplifying the efforts of newcomer serving organizations in the region. Because not only do you want to make sure when folks arrive, they're supported, but they have the support that they need to thrive for the years to come. This is just a quick look in no order at the existing members of the RSC. And so you see here, you've got your resettlement agencies, but you also have nonprofits that support a larger audience. You have public schools, you've got workforce entities, government entities, chambers, everything coming together to make sure that our refugee population has the ability to have a meaningful job, support their families, and contribute to our economy. Why we need this many folks is because we have so many refugees that live in the community. So before I share actually the exact numbers that we're looking at, I did want to take a quick pause to introduce the Refugee Service Collaborative members that are on this call. They are the experts in this work. They are the ones that you should go to if you have any questions, and you will hear from them later on in the presentation. But I just wanted to quickly pause so they could introduce themselves. And we'll start with the newest member of the RSC, actually, MJ Morgan. So Wade, I'll hand it over to you to quickly just say your name.
Hi, I'm Wade. I'm with MJ Morgan Group. We're a full service staffing and recruiting firm, and we're a proud member, the newest member of the RSC.
Amazing. And then some of our older members who helped found it will go to USCRI and Peter, and then jump over to Catholic Charities.
Yeah, I'm Peter Simonides. I'm the manager of refugee services or something of that sort at U.S. Committee for Refugees and Immigrants.
Amazing. And Beatrice?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Beatrice, and I am the program director for the Refugee Support Services Program at Catholic Charities Migration and Refugee Services.
And these 2 organizations, the last that you heard from, have been resettling the longest amount of time in our county or in our region. But we're very excited that May Dugan, as of a year ago, became a resettlement agency. So Sarah, if you want to quickly introduce yourself as well.
I'm Sarah Edelman. I am the Director of Education and Refugee Services for May Dugan.
Amazing. Thank you so much. So this is a quick look at a few members of the RSC, and all of these folks are necessary because we're supporting over 8,000 refugees in the region and almost 18,000 that are sort of spread out as well. And so this is just to give you an idea of what's happened over the last decade. On the left-hand side, you'll see a chart of resettlement since 2014 and ways in which it's just dramatically increased. We just closed out the fiscal year 2024, and the 3 resettlement agencies welcomed 1,400 new refugees and SIVs. We're looking towards next year, which is even bigger, but I just wanted to share this number with you to help you realize how fertile the pool is, if you will, for this talent. There are so many folks who are looking to build a career and support their families if they could just find an employer who's willing to hire them and to understand some cultural differences. So like I said, we have almost 8,000 refugees that have been resettled since fiscal year 2014. We have a very modest out-migration rate, which means folks can get resettled anywhere in the US and then decide to leave. That doesn't happen so often here. In fact, we see the opposite. We see a very high in-migration. So we have about 16% of our region's refugees are what we considered secondary migrants. So they landed in California or Connecticut or Florida or Atlanta, but decided to come here because they heard through word of mouth, through their family, their friends, that it's a better lifestyle here. You can have a house and send your kids to a school that's supportive and find work. And so I think that the news is out that Cleveland and Cuyahoga County is a great place to be as a newcomer. And so it's our opportunity for you all as employers to help receive them, because they are definitely coming here and coming here in large amounts. The last sort of data point I want to share with you before I hand to the real experts here is what's coming. So as I said, the fiscal year starts on October 1st. And our 3 agencies are going to be bringing in about 1,425 new refugees this coming year. Now, what's important to note about this number is that they're very similar to American Families, where they are family units. So we're not talking about 1,400 folks to be hired. We're talking about 1,400 individuals, about 50% of them being children, if not a little more. But you are looking at heads of households who want to support their family and to build a wonderful life for their family here in Cuyahoga County. We're incredibly excited that those of you who are with us live decided to join, and those of you that are watching the recording are interested in this, because the need is there. The talent wants a place to work. They want a place to build a career. And so we're so grateful that you are here to sort of be a part of this conversation. I'm going to hand it to the experts, like I said, who really do this work every single day. They're going to walk you through the hows, the nuts and bolts of actually accessing this talent, show you how you can amplify your efforts, and then really show us what it looks like in real time before we jump into questions. And so with that, I believe I'm handing it over to Beatrice, who's going to talk about the nuts and bolts of hiring refugee talent.
I think Peter's starting with this part and then I'll chime in.
Great. Awesome. Peter, go for it.
So sorry about that. Yeah, so refugees and SIVs, thank you for that great overview, Tanya. Working with refugees and SIVs. So we have refugees arriving as well as SIVs. And Tanya, I'm not sure if you gave a brief overview of SIVs arriving, but refugees and SIVs, when they arrive to the United States, are authorized to work. They are often waiting on just a social security card to be processed, which takes about 3 weeks after arrival. And then they have all the documents needed. Tanya, if you want to go to the next slide. So this is the second page of the I-9, which lists any possible documents that an individual could use to verify their work authorization. And so refugees and SIVs have a variety of documents that will prove that from the time that they get off the plane. And so it's not maybe the traditional set of documents that some employers are used to, but they do fit the list A requirements and then the list B and C requirements as well. And SIVs, they actually walk off the plane with a visa in their foreign passport that serves as a temporary green card, and they're supposed to receive their green card within 90 days, which is a list A document verifying that they are work eligible. So stepping straight into the workforce is very easy for many of our clients, and the entire U.S. refugee admissions program for refugees is really geared towards early employment. There's different resettlement programs through the world, and others are focused on education, but as the U.S. is, we are very geared towards early employment and getting people into the workforce to help them be self-sufficient and successful here. So if you want to go to the next slide, Tanya. So the three resettlement agencies, Catholic Charities, May Dugan, and USCRI, each of us have multiple different employment programs. We have oh, wow, that's great. Matching grant program, refugee support services, as well as an employer engagement program. In these, as we'll hear from Wade a little bit in a moment, these programs are really focused on individuals when they first get here. Clients are enrolling in these programs within their first 30 days in the country. And there's typical support between 6 months to a year in these programs that families are first here. So it's really focused on getting people into their first jobs. So a lot of the jobs that we're focused on are lower skilled jobs, jobs that individuals don't need to have credentials to enter into. In part because some of the clients that we have, they're coming with minimal education or skills, but others they might have these professional certifications, but those don't necessarily transfer to the U.S. workforce. And there are recertification processes, but that doesn't happen within the first few months of arrival. So our focus is really on those first jobs in the United States and getting the refugee and SIV clients kind of at the bottom rung of the ladder to beginning to work up within the workforce. Common barriers to employment. Tanya, you're on it. So some key things are transportation, language, U.S. work norms. So when families first arrive to the region, they do not come with cars. They're not given cars when they get here. So learning the bus system is a challenge. Limited public transportation just in general is a challenge. Most of our clients live on the near west side, starting to expand into spaces like Parma, some parts of East Cleveland, some of the western suburbs of Cleveland, but still pretty limited to the west side. We're always looking to expand that because we know that employers are in the larger region, and we need to have clients close to employers to be successful. But families want to be close to where other families are, where they can get their culturally appropriate groceries, where they can walk down the street and they know that there's a neighbor a few blocks away that speaks their language. So with that, transportation is always an issue when families first get here. Language, as I mentioned, some individuals arrive and they have been interpreters with the U.S. military overseas, and their English is incredibly fluent. It is you wouldn't even know that they did not grow up in the United States. But for, I would say, the majority of our clients, English does not come easily. And so while we enroll individuals in English classes and we enroll students in public school systems, English comes, but it comes slowly. So really the first 6 months to a year as we're placing families in jobs, the majority of our clients have a pretty limited grasp on English. And so some of the families that we're working with now, we have a growing Spanish-speaking population. And for families that speak Spanish, there's a lot more ease in learning English. But for another portion of our families who speak Swahili or who speak Pashto or Dari, the jump from those languages to English and even the resources for English language learning are a little bit more limited. And so that presents a challenge. We also encounter some challenges with U.S. work norms. Some of the things that I've encountered through the years are, I think timeliness is one that often comes to mind. I think financial literacy or navigating like the digital pay stub environment. Some of our clients come and they have incredibly high digital literacy. Others have never used a computer or a cell phone before. So there's a certain learning curve for some of our clients. Another aspect of that is learning the clock in, clock out system, or in certain countries, if you call off because you're sick, you call off one time. You don't have to call off every single day. But in the United States, you need to call off every single day. You need to have doctor's verification and notes. And so that can be a thing. And for some of our clients, U.S. Workplace hygiene practices can be something that they have to learn. So some of the ways that we engage those as resettlement agencies is engaging carpooling, teaching clients how to use the bus, how to use the rapid system across Cleveland. And many of our clients are willing to spend an hour to 2 hours on a bus. It's not something that they really want to do, but sometimes that's where the work is. We really try again to place people closer to employment, but there's pros and cons to where they're being resettled. So they use the bus system, but the bus system, public transportation is limited in Cleveland. Language, something that I think Wade might even talk about is doing some cluster hiring. So we have these groups where you have someone that was an interpreter for the US military and he speaks a language. Perhaps we could hire them with a group and that person could be kind of a representative or a supervisor working with the other staff. We've also, with newer employers, we've offered some interpreting during onboarding to assist both with HR, but then also like the initial day or two in order for new clients and new employers to adjust to the situation. So we've done this in a variety of ways. We have a language bank at USCRI. I believe that the other resettlement agencies also have interpreting resources, but the employer is able to hire an interpreter for more extensive periods of time to work, to do training. We did that recently with one of our newer employee partners and have been really successful in that as they've hired an interpreter to kind of walk with a cohort of new hires. And then I think for engaging US work norms, we provide cultural orientation to all of our clients that come through, and as well as like job readiness training, talking about workplace norms, general case management support. Typically we'll engage with some of the things that the newer workforce might be missing. And then we also, those first 2 weeks, we really try to have intentional check-ins with the employer and the employee to talk about what are some course correction things. Because if we get this right at the beginning, it's going to be a lot better in the long term and it's easier to correct before things become a big issue. So we really try to be intentional in the first 2 weeks as is needed. And we also have some basic financial literacy training that we walk through with our clients. Another way that our agencies kind of partner with employers is trying to partner with HR departments, assisting our clients with interviewing, both in coaching and then providing interpretation through the interview process. We always encourage our clients, even if they know 2 sentences in English, to use as much English as possible. But we're often there as a case manager to walk individuals through the paperwork, through the W-4s, the I-9s. And so that onboarding assistance is really key in providing transportation to and from the interviews from those first initial days and making sure that clients have a long-term plan. If it's going to be the bus, if it's going to be riding to work with a neighbor or a family member that they know, that's stuff that we really focus on early on.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Peter, with the nuts and bolts of like, what does it actually look like? And so if I had to summarize everything that he shared into 2 bullet points, what I would first say, one of the biggest misunderstandings is refugees. Do you have to sponsor them? Do you not? Please take away from this call that they have full work authorization. And in many ways, you're hiring them just like you're hiring an American. They've got those documents upon entry that you can hire them and you're not sponsoring them. So here's a talent pool that is just waiting to be a part of your workforce. And the second bullet that I would just sort of summarize what he said by saying is, it's not right, it's not wrong, it's just different. And cultures influence workforce and workplace culture so much. And so they are used to very different workplace cultures. It doesn't make it wrong. It's just quite different than ours. And I think that sometimes we see a different culture and we say, oh man, that's not going to fit for us. But trust me, if you get placed into a different country and a different work culture, you will also probably be wrong a few times. And I always use this example with folks. I used to work for a big Swedish company, and typical American, we'll eat like lunch at our desks. We just grind. We're working nonstop. And in the middle of the day at like 2 o'clock, everyone got up, went, had a coffee, eating pastries, chatting. I'm trying to get these things done so I can reach my deadline. And I had a manager come up to me and say, you really need to be over here. It's an important part of the day. As an American, I didn't realize that fika is such a significant part of the workplace in Sweden, where you stop and you talk and you have coffee and you just take a moment. So just encourage you to think about it's not right, it's not wrong, it's just different. And you can work around those culture norms and turn them into actually quite beautiful events together. So thank you so much, Peter, for the nuts and bolts. And I think that it's a lot easier than people think to bring refugees into the workforce. But if you still feel like, man, I'm interested, but I could use a little assistance, we are so grateful to have a partner in the RSC who can amplify your efforts and really bring in some of those sort of bridges of those barriers that Peter was talking about. And that's through our friends over at MJ Morgan. So I'll actually hand it over to you, Wade, to talk a bit about what you guys offer.
Well, thank you so much, Tanya, and thank you to Bree as well for organizing, and thank you to everybody for jumping on and joining. If you just bear with me for one quick second, I'm going to go ahead and share. All right, Tanya, are you going to go through my slides, or would you like me to share? Okay, that's perfect.
you, yep.
Okay, yep. So we're MJ Morgan Group. We're a full-service staffing and recruiting firm based out of Baltimore, Maryland. Our company was founded in 2006. We operate across the country. Currently in our Ohio market, we're operating from all the way as north as Eastlake to all the way as south as Medina or Akron. And our team is very diverse. Our recruiting staff is multilingual and speaks over 10 different languages, including some of the ones that you can see there on that slide. Tanya, if you want to go to the next one. We do have an in-house E-Verify and I-9 sort of specialist department, and we've been participating in the Department of Homeland Security's E-Verify program since 2008. So Sharon Laviera, who's actually one of the partners of our firm, is our dedicated I-9 specialist with plenty of experience, and we have Paul Rahana to act as our immigration attorney and corporate counsel with over 10 years of experience as well. With that being said, our whole team is very trained on employment authorization documents and I-9s, so we're able to kind of know what we're looking at and assist our employer partners with getting those administrative pieces filled out for the refugee workforce. Next slide. As far as diversity goes, this is kind of just a quick map showing where a lot of our workforce is coming from, a lot of them being refugees. And like Tanya and Peter both had stated earlier, all of these people are coming over ready to work. They have everything that they need ready to go as far as employment authorization documents. So we can go through to the next one. Some of the benefits that we have for working with an international workforce, obviously, first and foremost, diverse perspectives and viewpoints. It's going to expand your talent pool. So it's access to a much larger and more diverse talent pool, which is going to give you access to a wider range of individuals and skill sets. That's ultimately going to reduce your time to hire and fill open positions. Word of mouth expansion and recruitment is still a very, very, very common way to fill open jobs. A lot of times you'll find that individuals with certain skill sets or in certain communities are likely to be in networks and frequently communicating with individuals with other skills and experiences. So if you have a great employee from a certain community that's coming to work and doing a great job, it's very likely that they're going to tell their friends, and it could be a great opportunity for your company to expand and get roles filled very quickly. Language skills and cultural insights. I think we all can agree that a bilingual individual can be a real MVP for your organization. It can also give you cultural insights when you're doing business with people from other countries or people from other communities. Competitive advantage, simply put, other employers are noting these above mentioned benefits and taking advantage of this talent pool. So making sure that your organization is also doing that is going to allow you to stay competitive in your industry's labor market. And then reputation, international workforces can enhance a company's reputation as a forward-thinking, globally aware company that's attracting top talent on a regular basis. So you can go through to the next slide. So yeah, some of the barriers, and I know Peter talked about these a little bit. Employment authorization is going to be the first thing. And once again, refugees that are coming over in 2025 are going to have everything that they need. They're going to be fully eligible to work. However, not all the time do they know what they need to bring to their first day of work or know exactly what they're looking for. So our internal team is very familiar with IDs, employment authorization documents, etc., that come from all over the globe in all different kinds of forms. And our I-9 specialists that are in-house can work with candidates to ensure that everybody has the proper documentation and make sure that they are confident and comfortable that they know they're going to work with the proper authorizations. Transportation, international newcomers often rely on public transportation, which can be very difficult to learn, especially upon their first arrival into the US, which can severely limit their ability to find a job just geographically. We do contract with a third-party transportation service that allows us to get our workforce around Northeastern Ohio, and that can certainly be a benefit to both employers and employees. So from the employer perspective, it definitely expands the geographic region of which you're able to pull talent from. And for employees, it's going to expand their opportunities and give them more selection of jobs to pick from. Communication and language. Non-English speakers can often find that getting a job in the US is hard just due to language barriers. However, once again, our internal team of recruiters and consultants speak over 10 different languages. So this allows us to very clearly and concisely explain job functions to candidates to make sure that they're finding the right position that we know that they're going to be successful and comfortable with. In several of our markets, we contract with companies like Pillars for Humanity or Global Refuge to provide ESL classes. Like Peter was saying earlier, that does come along a little bit slower. So we do have cluster hire programs where we would be able to have one individual that is maybe a bilingual person or at least can understand enough language to get by, act as a lead. We're able to compensate them a little bit more and then have them kind of show the rest of the workforce on that shift or in that facility the ropes essentially, and show them how the operations are supposed to be run. We find that a lot of times in these situations, it's a really good opportunity for the employees because being in a group of people from their community or from their country is going to make them feel more comfortable while they're at work as well. All right, and then the next slide. Transportation, I just wanted to go over very quickly the logistics of it. We do contract with a third-party transportation company, operates 24/7. In most of our Ohio market, we're able to pick up our employees from their homes. So it makes it super easy for people, especially upon their arrival into the US, when they don't necessarily know the RTA system or aren't living somewhere that it's easily accessible. In some locations, we do use kind of hub and spoke pickup spots too to get people to Catholic Charities or to the Hope Center. So we do have locations like that. If we need to pick somebody up from maybe an ESL class 2 days a week, that's something we can certainly work out as well. Once again, the transportation program that we offer at MJ Morgan Group is a really great tool for expanding the geographical region of which our employer partners are able to source talent from. It allows us to get everybody to and from work in a very safe manner, and it does negate issues with inclement weather, the RTA not running correctly, buses breaking down, etc. So that's just kind of a little piece about how our transportation program works. And that's pretty much it. If you'd like to connect with us and learn a little bit more about what we do and how we support these communities at MJ Morgan Group, all of our information will be at this last slide here. I know that this presentation is being recorded, so you can feel free to reach out to myself. I'm Wade, Territory Manager of Ohio, or Leanne, who's also on this call. She's one of our business development managers.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Wade. And I would be remiss if I didn't say that we first came across Wade and his team through newcomers themselves. So they very much trust and respect the work that MJ Morgan does in helping them secure jobs. So if you're interested and you sort of want to, sometimes we'll say try before you buy. If you want to see what it's like to work with newcomer population, please get in touch with the MJ Morgan team, as they're really able to help you bridge some of those barriers and those gaps alongside of our resettlement agencies. So we're going to jump into what does this look like? So now you know who we're talking about, how to hire them, resources to amplify your efforts in hiring them. But where has this worked in the past? Because it does work. That is also why the U.S. continues to increase its resettlement numbers as a way of increasing our workforce. So we have a couple case studies that our folks from the resettlement agencies are going to walk through to give you examples of ways that it's helped with retention or build up their workforce. So I will pause myself and hand it over to Peter and Beatrice.
Yeah, Beatrice, feel free to jump in on any of this. But yeah, I wanted to start by highlighting University Hospitals, their kitchen area. I know this is not a manufacturing facility, but we've had a partnership with University Hospitals and placing clients within their kitchen, and we've really kind of created a problem for ourselves. We have placed a lot of clients there, and because of the reversal of turnover rates, they have no more open positions for us. So kind of when we first started, we were able to place a lot of individuals there. However, the because individuals are staying and thriving there, there's very few openings. The some of the key things that University Hospitals has done is they create a lot of staff buy-in. I've been able to like attend some of their like team meetings, and from all levels of management, from like the head of their kitchens, HR, all the way down to the people putting the food together and passing trays through the hospital. There's a lot of buy-in for hiring newcomers to having them within the hospital system. It has really helped the hospital system because sometimes you have patients that come in and they speak these languages. And so to have someone pass off a tray who's also able to greet you and welcome you in your native language has been really an extra bonus to them. Some of the things that have made UH really successful is also having newcomers grow through the system. So starting as dishwashers, then moving to food prep. And then we have an individual that came, I think in 2019, who's working in one of the laboratories now at University Hospital. So they were able to do get some credentialing through the hospital system and are continuing to move up within the company. There's always a lot of positive team atmosphere anytime that I'm in the kitchen. I think the managers have been really intentional about pulling everybody in, about making it a good workplace for those coming in, and really putting in an upfront investment as individuals come in, and they might not have a good knowledge of navigating their bank account or knowing how to set up a direct deposit. I've known managers at UH that have worked really closely with some of our clients to set up bank accounts to make sure that they're getting these their paychecks directly deposited, that they have access to everything, answering questions that they might not be used to, and so they put in this upfront investment, but the long-term payoff is really, really worth it. They're also incredibly flexible in the hiring process. With our newcomers, they let us kind of pass through some of the red tape. They're still doing employment authorizations, still following all HR processes, but the interview doesn't have to check all the boxes that they might need for someone that doesn't have an agency recommendation, that doesn't have one of the resettlement agencies kind of walking with the family. So that's been a huge key for helping us really partner with university hospitals. One other partnership I was going to mention is Hilton Hotels. We've
Can I add something
yeah,
for
please.
UH, Peter?
Yeah.
Two big things with UH is how informal their hiring process is. Having a contact at any of the companies that we work at is very helpful, and we're able to have like the phone number for one of the hiring managers there. So it's very, very helpful for us to acquire about open positions and to follow up with them to get clients placed. And then of course, transportation, because it is closer to where a lot of our clients are placed, it's a lot easier to place clients there to travel train them and for them to just get there by themselves after that first attempt at travel training them. Sorry, Peter.
No, I think that's a really great point, Beatrice. Having that personal connection with someone who's working there is so much easier than submitting applications online and not knowing where things are going. But just wanted to highlight with Hilton, with just like a 6-month partnership with them, we've started placing, we started with us, I think it was about 30 people that we placed there. Their turnover was at 130%, and just 6 months later, it's at 38%, and we're hoping to decrease that even further. And that I think has been a good example of, we've been really heavily working with Hilton the past few months, and gone in and provided some education for their staff. What does it look like for them to be working with our clients, and also having some like hands-on job training. USCRA has an occupational therapy program, and so through that, we've had some of our occupational therapists go and assist some of the new staff, just learn some of the routines, some of the ways to use different devices, and it's been really key because occupational therapy is really geared towards like nonverbal communication. So they're able to teach key things to the staff at Hilton so that they can teach our new staff as they're starting there. So that's been just a really successful partnership. And so I know that's not manufacturing. We also work with a number of manufacturers. I think from this list, Odie is maybe one of the ones that I think mirrors some of the similar practices of UH with having staff buy-in, with the turnover rates. I've not been able to place anybody at Odie recently because they haven't been hiring as aggressively. So when I think in like 2020, or not 2022, I was putting a lot of individuals at Odie, but that's not the case anymore because they're in positions of leadership. Someone that I worked with in 2021 is now an HR manager there. So there's a lot of like really good progress, but it makes it more difficult for us because we need more employers because our clients are being really successful in these spaces. Beatrice, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I would say a really big thing with this slide is Rockwell. Last year, Rockwell kind of changed the way that we work with companies that are a little bit further out. They really invested in working with refugees, primarily with Afghans. They were able to work with our staff here and at USCRI to figure out transportation. They provided free transportation for clients for 6 months, and the goal was for clients to be able to save up and to purchase a car within that time. The biggest thing with that company as well is that their pay was high. So it would allow clients to still pay for their bills, support their families, and actually save for a car. Because while transportation is a big barrier, we're able to travel train clients, they're able to get there themselves. We saw clients become a little bit more self-sufficient with this. The clients who were there a little bit longer were able to save, get cars, and they were also able to carpool for a lot of their friends, which led to a lot of people getting interested in working at Rockwell. So our clients are very community-based and they talk. So if a company invests a lot into hiring and working with refugees, then you see that growth through the clients. You see them be able to, grow little by little, support their families, and then also bring their friends so that they can also see that level of self-sufficiency.
Yeah, I love that so much. And I just encourage for our manufacturers on this call to look at this list not as a disencouraging moment. There's so few, but as a huge opportunity because this works. We just don't have enough manufacturers who are willing to tap into this talent pool. And it is a really, really huge opportunity. As you just heard Beatrice say, Rockwell Automation, it's only been recently that they kind of took that extra step. And then word travels very, very fast in the newcomer groups, in their WhatsApp channels, their Facebook, their religious communities. So once you sort of hire a group of them, you then get a reputation in the entire community as a great place to work. I do want to see if Sarah from Maydugan, another resettlement agency, if you have anything you'd like to share. And then also Wade, I know you guys are the primary partners with National Safety Apparel as well. So Sarah, anything you'd add to kind of like current hiring examples?
I think Peter and Beatrice are knocking it out of the park. They're saying everything I would say.
Great. Anything on your end, Wade, with NSA? And for those who don't know, NSA is really the one who's been doing it the longest in this region, but they're very, very close partners with MJ Morgan.
Yeah, so similar to what Beatrice was talking about with Rockwell Automation, we provide that transportation piece and that part of the service to National Safety Apparel, who we've been partnered with for a couple of years now. Tanya, you're right, they have been doing it for a long time, and they're very, very good about training their employees as well. So a lot of their jobs do not require English, and when they do bring someone on, they're very good about giving clear weekly evaluations almost, which allows us as the employer of record to have very clear conversations about our employees improving, and it's just a great strategy for retention. So with our partnership with National Safety Apparel, a lot of times we'll find our candidates from our agency partners, such as Catholic Charities or the USCRI. We'll enroll them in transportation, send them to work at National Safety Apparel, where over the course of about 6 months or so, they're able to save money and purchase their own car. That's one of the most rewarding parts about what my job is when I get that call that's like, hey, I would like to be pulled off of the transportation route. I was actually able to purchase a car over the weekend. That's great. That's what the goal is. So National Safety Apparel has definitely been a great partner of ours that's kind of showed the willingness to work with a global workforce.
Yeah, that's super great. And I think the other thing as an employer, I encourage you to think about it. Of course, it is incredibly difficult to understand your workforce needs so many years in advance. But if you can go back to the beginning when we were talking about the deficits in the workforce just by the retirement rate and the low birth rate, is you are making a very, very long-term and fruitful investment when you are working with newcomers now. Because when you use the NSA example, those folks are now managers. So their management team is multilingual, where they don't even need cluster hiring as much because management speaks all these languages. So you're making an upfront investment for a really long-term, fruitful workforce. So these are just a few examples, and hopefully you all would want to join so we can add your name to this list in the future. But before we open for questions, we just wanted to share sort of 4 keys to success or quick tips for you all. And I'll turn to our resettlement agencies, as they're actually the experts, like I said, on just ways that you can be successful right off the bat. Peter will hand you.
Yeah, I can. Yeah, so just really quickly, I think a lot of clients, when they first get here, they need a livable wage. Sometimes it's only one individual who's able to work really early on for their family. And so I think our average starting wage right now is around 17 an hour. Beatrice, Sarah, if you have a different range,
Yeah.
even Wade.
It was around 17 last semester for us because of the Rockwells and the companies that paid a little bit more. I feel like now it's around 16 for us for the semester.
Yeah, I think we're typically looking to start people at 15 and up, but our average, I think, because of that Rockwell partnership, has been a little higher. And I think we've all kind of hit the opportunity for growth, opportunity to not just stay where people are at. Like, these are individuals that are hungry to grow, to adapt, to learn. So as long as there's opportunity, individuals continue to progress and grow in companies. Many of our families early on, partially because they're working with us, they have additional doctor's appointment. They're making sure that their kids are settled in school. Sometimes they're really trying to attend English classes. There's just different things that some families in their first 6 months, they have a higher number of appointments that are going on, legal, you name it. So I think flexibility for those, and just creating lines of communication from new hires to management. And so there's understanding of, how do we request off? How do we do this within the proper systems? Our clients are typically pretty compliant with that. They need to know. And then again, having vertical buy-in. And I think this I mentioned with university hospitals. So from like their management all the way down to like middle management to supervisors, there's just a belief that this works, that long term the company is going to benefit and grow. And so having that buy-in from the people doing the hiring, from the people that are going to be working with newcomers, is super important for this to work long term.
Anything else from our other RSC members that you would just add to for these keys to success in hiring refugee talent?
The only thing that I would add is regards to number 3, with flexibility, childcare can really be a big barrier for our clients as well, especially for single moms. So it's always good for companies like NSA that are Monday through Friday, or companies that might have overtime on the weekends, to be a little bit mindful of that. Depending on the daycare, the client's still able to work full time, but weekends is definitely a barrier for them because most daycares are closed on the weekends.
I would just chime in about the opportunity for growth. A lot of times we'll be placing someone who in their home country had a high level job, but now they're coming in as an entry level manufacturer. They have management skills, and that's just really important for us to be able to say there is an opportunity for growth. This isn't ideal, but maybe 6-8 months down the road, you could go up for a management position if it works out. And I think that's really key for buy-in for our clients as well.
Yeah, and kind of picking off of what Sarah just kind of added, manufacturing in general is a great opportunity for growth, as opposed to getting some other jobs that are typically available to international newcomers. So just education about these are the best opportunities for you because it has that upward movement. And I think something that's very important as far as bullets 1, 2, 3, and 4 here is just communication. Like I said about with NSA, they do a very good job. I mean, we all know that there's going to be issues or barriers that might come up on a time-to-time basis. It's not that it's right, it's not that it's wrong, it's just different, like Tanya was saying earlier. So just having that clear line of communication, weekly evaluations, what can we do better each and every week from an employee to or employer to an employee standpoint, I think that is a huge piece of it as well.
Yeah, and Wade, you touched on the point that I always like to share with folks too, is of course you're building out sort of the workforce of the future, but think about the families that have all these children who don't even know about manufacturing. And so you're not only hiring someone for today's workforce, but you're inspiring younger generations. And if there's anything that's true about the American workforce is that younger generations do not want to follow in the footsteps of their parents. And therefore we have kind of this gap in the traditional trades or manufacturing. And so a really cool opportunity to make a difference in your needs of right now, but also get the younger folks excited and inspired by the growth opportunities of starting a career and living a career out in manufacturing. With that, we're coming close to time, but I just wanted to make sure you saw all of the contact information of our experts here from the resettlement agencies as well as MJ Morgan. All of them are RSC members. If you're interested in knowing more about the RSC, you're welcome to contact me. But I do want to pause in our last few minutes to see if there's any questions. I know we had a couple questions ahead of time too, but from anyone who's on the call, if you wanted to unmute or drop in the chat any questions. I'll tee up the question that someone gave us beforehand, which was, okay, I'm interested, now what? Email. Email these folks. If you are interested, they are the direct line to these different talent pools. And then they'll help you think critically, as you've heard throughout, is like, is it actually the Afghan population that's a great fit for your role in your community, or is it the Congolese, or is it a mix? They can really help you tailor your recruiting efforts to get the right talent into the right positions.
Please forgive me. Would you be so kind as to spell out the acronym SIV as in Victor?
Yeah, Peter, do you want to take the quick description of the special immigration visa just so folks know what that group is?
Yeah, so
Okay.
SIV holders are special immigrant visa holders. So individuals in Iraq or Afghanistan who have worked with U.S. military for at least 2 years in different capacities are able to access an SIV and come to the United States if their family is at risk of remaining in the country because of their involvement with the U.S.
Thank you.
Yep.
And I'd just add that not all, but the vast majority of SIVs have credentials and are bilingual. They're sort of that category you heard where they sound American. And that is a group that would be really valuable for you to tap into if you're looking for engineers or management, because as they're starting to get their credentials translated to the US system, you could hire them in and really use that experience. We are at 11 and we like to be very respectful of your time. And so before I hand it back to Bree, just a really big thank you to folks who are watching it live or on the recording and our teams from the various organizations within the RSC. We're very lucky to live in a community that is attractive to newcomers, but also has the supports for newcomers. And thank you, Bree and Manufacturing Works for giving us a chance to share this information. And I'll hand it back to you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Tanya, Wade, Beatrice, Peter, and Sarah, bonus speaker. It was really great to hear all of your expertise. I learned something, hopefully others did as well. Thanks for those who could attend. This will be on our YouTube channel, the recording of this, just so you know. And I hope you all have a good day.
Thank you for an excellent presentation. Appreciate it. Have a wonderful day. Keep up the
Thanks,
good work.
Jack. Bye-bye.
God bless. Bye.